Carla, the crazy cross-stitch lady. Welcome to the truck. I am waiting in here for my husband who's gone into the store. But I wanted to preface this whole video with letting you know that this tutorial was what I would consider a mess. Not everything went the right way, and I had to do some editing and piecing videos together. But I just wanted to let you know that I do realize that it's not the best in the world, but I still hope that you get some stuff out of it. And I just wanted to let you know ahead of time that you're going to see a lot of stuff. But I do like editing. I don't do a whole lot of editing, and I just put it out there the way it was. So this part here is going to lead into my original introduction to the video. And I hope that you still enjoy it and that you still get some stuff out of it. So enjoy the video. Hi, I'm Carla, the crazy cross-stitch lady. Welcome to my craft room. Today we're going to do a tutorial on embellishments and different ways that you can embellish your projects. We're going to talk about beads and buttons, and then some things that maybe aren't beads and buttons. They're just little knick-knack things, and how do we get them on there? And if you want to know, my shirt says easily distracted by cows, which is very true. So anyway, I thought I just noticed, I thought you're going to see like a part of a cow head and wonder what in the world that shirt says. So anyway, that's what it says. But I am so happy that you have joined me today, and I want to thank all of my new subscribers, and just thank you for joining me in this little community, in this journey that we're on to enjoy our craft together, and just really, it's everything about cross-stitching. But today, for our tutorial, it is everything about embellishments. And so I'm going to switch the camera around, and we're going to talk about how in the world did she put these on here. So if you have been there, done that, and bought the t-shirt on embellishments, and you could show me a few things, then just if you want to use this as a stitch with me, then please feel free to do that. If you would like to offer some extra pieces of advice in the comments, if there are certain ways that you put embellishments on that maybe I didn't talk about, or you think of better ways to do that, please feel free to put those in the comments so that everyone else in the community can be helped by that as well. And of course, there are many videos out there, but this is my version of it because I know there really aren't a lot of beading videos out there. So hopefully, if you've never done this before, this will at least help you to get kind of a grasp of it and to get started on it so that you can try it out and see if you would like to add some embellishments to your projects. So I'm going to turn the camera around and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to show you a few different ways to put embellishments on your projects. I'm going to show you with a couple of buttons. I'm going to show you how to do beads. There are a couple of different ways you can work with beads. And then we're going to talk about those things that maybe don't have any attachment to them at all. And then you have to kind of figure out what to do with those. Okay, so let's start with buttons. Now, I have to give a shout out to my husband on this one. So for some reason, I had beads, I had other embellishments, but I did not have any buttons. And my husband was going into town, and I said, can you please find some buttons for me? Just a small bag, I don't need very many. You'll just please find me some buttons. I said, Joanne's probably have plenty. He said, okay. So he went into town, and they must have had, well, actually, he did tell me they had a sale going on. He got me this, and I've already had this container, but let me show you what he got me. So there was a bag of these patriotic stars, red, white, and blue. There was a bag of these kinds of pretty little, like brown and have patterns on them types of buttons. So I had those. And I'll probably separate these into containers later, but I just want to get them stored. Then there were these, like these whimsical little buttons. And then some of these fancier buttons that, and some of them just have the little loop on the back. And so I'll show you, you can treat these the same way that you would beads. So he got me all of these, and he also got me a couple of bags of beads while he was at it. So he got me some of these, and I put these in this container. I already had some of these beads there. And then he bought me these. And so I'm going to use those to show you how to bead today. So shout out and kudos to my hubby. Okay, so what I have done is I have already, I knotted this because I already cut the thread. And I normally don't knot my floss, but I am for today. I'm using a size 28 needle. This is my go-to Bowen. John James needles are really good too, but Bowen is my go-to pretty much. And so you'll want at least a size 28. You don't want to get a bigger needle than that because most of your beads are not going to fit over the eye of those needles, and that's what you need. Some people get beading needles. They are a very special, long, thin type of needle. I don't care for them very much, so I don't use them, but again, that's a personal preference. And you're going to find that with all of this, it's, again, with cross stitch and everything, it's personal preference. So I'm going to show you a few different ways that you can do this depending on the project that you have, depending on the look you want. But if you haven't beaded before, then or done any kind of embellishments, I'm going to show you how to do that. You can use Aida, any type of fabric, your even weave, your linen, all of it's going to work, operate the same way. It's just with even weave and linen, you typically go over 2 instead of over 1. So I'm going to show you with a small button first. This is my little bead button. And so I'm going to do this first one. I'm going to secure it with a tent stitch. And I'm going to show you what happens to this button when you do the tent stitch. So you can orient it this way, or you can go sideways with it, or you can go this way. Depending on how you want it oriented, you're going to have to, what you would do, let me zoom in here. Whoa, let's get some focus. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you can do a tent stitch, or you can even like go up or go across. So it depends on how you want it oriented. So we're just going to do a tent stitch. And so what I do with my buttons is I will go in one hole and then go ahead and take my needle. Okay, so it's come up through that one hole, and then take my needle down through the other one, and notice that it's slipping right through. So it fit over the eye of that needle very well. Okay, so now let me move that button aside so you can see where I came up. Now I'm going to do a tent stitch. So I'm just going to come over to this one, and I'm going to pull that thread down. See how that's landed? It's kind of tilted, and I can scoot it a little bit, but that's basically how it's going to look. If you like that look, great. If not, I'm going to show you what to do with this other button where you can orient it a different way. But I've got the tent stitch, and so now I'm going to turn it over and try to go back through that first hole. And now I've got it coming up through here. We're going to go one more time just to secure it, and I'm going to go back down through this hole. Okay, so now I've got it going twice. Now, you see why it's important to use about the same color thread. Right now, I'm using a brown, and we can see how that shows up against that green. Now, that is the kind of look you like. If you want a contrasting color, then that's what you go for. But typically, most people want the beads to be the star of the show and not the floss. The floss is, the floss is simply there to secure it. So I'm just using this to demonstrate for you, but normally if I were actually putting this on a project, I would choose a green floss to go with it. I would try to get as close as I could to that shade, but I wouldn't be, you know, horribly concerned. Now with buttons, you do want to be careful, and even white would look good with this. White is not going to take away from your button, typically. Now, if I used like one of these, let me find one of these brown buttons. Like if I used, especially a button like this, I would either go with a white or maybe a dark brown, and I would go through both sets of holes. For this, I wouldn't just leave one set empty. I would go through both. And it would depend on the colors that are in the rest of my project too. So if I'm putting a button in like this, I'm assuming that I'm going to have some similar colors in that project. So it would depend on just what kind of look you like. Okay, so now I've got my button there. And so if I had stitches around it, then I would just secure this by, I would run my needle under those other stitches and pull it through to secure it. This, I'm not too worried about it because I'm just demonstrating. But if you did have a button all by itself like this, then where I have this, I would probably just run my needle through here like this and just do that about 4 or 5 times, just to make sure that it's not going anywhere. So I'm going to do it one more time. Okay. And so you notice though that this is loose. Now, the reason that it's a little bit loose is that's just the way, if you've got a 2-hole button, it's going to be kind of like that. But I've only done a 10th stitch. So 10 stitches, you know, it's going to leave it a little bit looser. But, you know, once you have your project finished, it's typically, I mean, people aren't going to be messing with it anyway. So some people like theirs to be very tight on there. I don't get really concerned about it because, like I said, once the project is done and you have it displayed, it's not going anywhere. If you've put it through the holes at least twice, if you're concerned about it, you can do it 3 times, but it's going to stay put wherever if you want to, but it's going to stay pretty much in that diagonal position. Okay. And that's because I did a 10th stitch. Now, I'm just going to cut this off and let me knot my thread so I can put this other one through. Now, normally to start it, I would do a loop start. If I'm able to do a loop start, I'll just do a loop start like I normally would. Now, let me come down here. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to come down here. Now, let's put Mr. Star on here if I can pick it up. Goodness. Okay. So I want my star to be upright like this. I don't want it tilted. I want mine upright for whatever project I'm working on. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come up through this hole, okay, like that. Take my needle back down through the second hole. And now I'm going to go up. And because this star is big, I'm probably going to go up instead of doing like going up. Well, let me move it where I can see, where you can see it. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Instead of coming up 1, I'm probably going to do either 2 or 3, probably 3. It's a pretty big star. So if I come up here to this hole, 3 up, and then go down, and then I'm gonna, now, we see how it's sitting up this way now. So now I can come back through, and this one, I'm gonna come through. Let's see if I can get my needle. May have to look in the back and come back up through this hole. So sometimes you have to finagle with it a little bit. You have to be patient and come up. And if you come up in a different spot than you did before, I don't think I would worry about it too much as long as you have your holes here in the general area where you want them. That's going to be the key, is this lined up where you want it, okay? But we're still going across. We're not going diagonal like a tent stitch. We're still going across, okay? And then I would, again, just run it through stitches that are along the side. Or if you did this first, then you can just run it through or run it under this. Okay, and then keep running it under that. Keep pulling it, running it under, you know, and so on. Most of the time, people will add embellishments after they have stitched. And they will sometimes, especially with buttons usually will go on top of existing stitches. A lot of times they're not usually like out by themselves like this. And so you will have stitches where you can run your needle through, you know, on the underside of them like you normally would to finish your stitch, okay? So that's how you do buttons. I find buttons to be a little bit tougher than beads. I find beads to be a lot easier. Buttons are really cute, and I think they're certainly cute to add as embellishments on pillows and such. And, you know, it's okay if they wiggle around a little bit. Now, if you get the ones with 4 holes, they should be where, you know, they're not going to move a whole lot because you're putting your thread through 2 sets of holes. So it should hold a little bit better. But that's how I use buttons. Okay, and that's how I put them on for embellishments. And so I'm just going to cut this off. I think I'm going to start a new thread. I'm still going to use this brown just because, and I've already got some there. So there are my buttons. Let me put my needle there, get my floss here, and we're going to switch over to the beads. And there are a couple of different ways that you can put your beads together. Listen, there are a couple of different ways that you can put beads on a project. I'll get it in a minute. Now, the one thing I don't normally use size 28. And so it can be a bear to get the floss through the needle unless you're used to using 28 all the time. So bear with me just a minute while I get this thing threaded, which I hope I don't start throwing stuff. Because I got the other one through pretty easily. This one's given me a little bit of a fit. So give me just a minute. I might be able to get this threaded. I usually use, like I've used 24 a lot, and I've gotten to the point where I prefer now to use more like a size 26 with my stitching. But a lot of times even the 26 is going to be a little bit big for beading, and you want to make sure, okay, it's being really stubborn. I might have to pause this video, we'll see. I don't want to waste 10 minutes just threading a needle. So probably should have had like 2 of them threaded and ready to go. All right, I had to stop the video and I'm back now, because this thing was giving me a fit. And I thought, I cannot waste all that time just having you listen to me struggle with this. So there's a reason I don't use 28 usually. So, okay. So let's start with these beads here. Okay, so I'm going to use one out of here. And again, you would like to have your thread matching, but it depends on what your project is. A lot of people will use a little sticky mat, and it's like a little square. It almost looks like a little CD case, in a way, a little jewel case, or those of us who are a little older used to use those all the time. And it's got a little sticky mat in there, and you pour your beads on there, and that way you can just take your needle and pick one up. Well, I'm going to take my needle and see if I can pick one up out of here. Got it. Okay, so there's my bead. Now, I want to make sure it slides over the eye. Okay, so it will. Okay, now, I need to, first of all, I'm going to slide this back off. I'm going to just set this down. I'll be able to pick it up in a minute. So, let me put my needle back up here through our fabric. Okay. These little 28s are a little flimsy too. Okay, so I'm just going to do my loop start. Okay, get my loop, maybe. Well, it came undone. So this is what happens when you don't normally use 28s. Oh, can you feel my pain yet? It came undone. Well, let's see if I can have a little bit of luck without starting the camera again. I would really, really like for this to cooperate with me. Come on. Have any of you, I don't have a needle threader with me, so I'm trying to do it the way I usually do it, which I usually don't have an issue with it, but it is really causing me issues. So here we go again. Well, I will tell you now, this is going to be a mess for me to try to edit. We'll see. Okay, so let me come back up through this hole. Okay, so now I think we're ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to grab my bead here. Now I'm going to slide it on my needle, and we're going to take it all the way through. Now, one way that you can attach a bead is by simply doing a tent stitch, which is a half stitch. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and pull my bead through. And typically I will do, I don't know, probably I'll go through at least twice. And so I'm just going to bring my needle back up in the original hole, and then I'm just going to go through the center there and then go back down in the other hole that I was in. So that should secure it. Now, one thing that you're going to notice is a lot of times beads, especially if you put several beads on in a row, they will tend to start going sideways like this. If you just do a tent stitch, they won't all sit up. Now this one's sitting up because it's by itself, but you start putting on several. So let's say I want to put another one on. So if I want to put another one on, then I can go up through and see this bead is taking up real estate for both, like for the hole that I came in, and it's taking this up. So I'll probably come up to this one just to give that bead a little room. And it also depends on the look that you want. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to grab this bead and slide it on. And then, because I came up in this hole, I'm going to go into this one. Well, maybe. Now my buttons are getting in the way. I'm having a rough time here, y'all. Supposed to be helping you. You might have to help me. Okay, so now I put this one on. Okay. Now, they're not right beside each other. I could have probably gotten it closer, but that's what that looks like. And that's how you can put beads next to each other. Those are a little bit bigger. I've got some really tiny, tiny beads too that you can put like right next to each other. But, you know, they'll tend to want to move a lot. You know, this one, so if I want to secure it, I'll go back up into that original hole that I was in. Well, maybe. Sometimes you have to move it to the side a little bit. So there it is. That's the original hole. And then I'm going to take my needle back through the bead. And then I'm going to go down into the other hole that I had gone down into first. And then there you go. Okay, so it's secured pretty well. All right. Now, some people want to do a full cross with their beads because they feel like it secures it much better. Typically, if I'm beading quite a bit, I won't go through twice. I will go through once and I just keep going. And they'll stay. If it's on a project, they'll stay pretty well. Now, these are pretty sturdy, but some people may go through twice if they just feel like it's gonna, you know, they're not they don't feel very secure about where their beads are. So if I'm going to go through and make a full cross stitch and hold on to one of these, let me get another one, and I'm going to come down a little bit. Okay, let's see. Let me find one. There we go. Okay, so let me get away from those a little bit. Let me come in up at this hole right here. Okay. All right, now I'm going to put my bead on. Okay, slide it through. That's on the needle. Okay, I'm going to slide it down. Okay, there it is. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I am going to go up here to make my first leg of my X. Okay, now pull it through. Okay, now I am going to come up in the bottom left. Okay, so this is the next part to make my X. Now this is a little trick I learned. Instead of trying to go through that hole, which you see how it's sideways like that, that's going to be hard to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go over the bead and go up to the top left. Okay, now when I pull it down, what I'm going to do is, split my thread. Now, I'm not used to doing this, so it may be, this may turn out pretty ugly. But the little trick is to split your thread. I don't know how well you can see this. And let me find a more open spot here. And you're supposed to split it, and then it actually goes over, your two threads go over your bead, and then you just pull it on down. And now, and you see I had some difficulty with that, but now you've made a full cross stitch. Now, do you see a difference in these beads? I don't. Some people may feel more comfortable doing a full cross. I typically don't. I do a tent stitch, and I may do a tent stitch twice to make sure that it's secure. A lot of people I know who do a lot of beading. Now, I don't do a lot of embellishments. I do some, but people who do a bunch of beading, at least the ones I know, have usually just done tent stitches. And they like the way the bead sits sideways. Now, if you do a full cross, now if I pull it and then I make it secure, the bead actually does, this bead sits up a little bit more. Some people want their beads to sit completely upright. I think if you're doing mirabilia pieces that require a lot of beading, I don't know that I'd want to be doing full crosses with each one, and I think most people probably don't, especially since all the beads are together. They're going to kind of push on each other anyway, and they're going to move a little bit. But they don't look sideways to me. They look like they're sitting where they're supposed to sit. These beads really don't look, sideways, like they're tilting. They're sitting up. So a lot of it also depends on how you, like if you go through a few times with your thread and secure it, but you can, like I said, you can do it either way. You can try it both ways and see which way you like best. You may do this and then decide you hate beading, and that's okay, but I always suggest that you try new things. I prefer doing the beads to the buttons, but I'll do buttons. I've done these buttons and I think they're cute. I may limit my use of buttons and do more beading if I want to do embellishments, but there you go. So that's how you can actually use your stitching to put embellishments on. Now I want to show you, and so I'm going to I'm just going to trim this off. I want to show you another type of embellishment that And I thought I had one in here. I may just use a button to show you, but some of these don't. They either, like if they've got these little hooks, these are buttons, but of course they don't have holes in them. And so you would basically treat this like you do a bead with the one hole. But some of these, and I had found one, I thought I had one. I thought I was prepared again. But, so it goes. Oh, there we go. Whew. This is a rough one, y'all. Okay, so we have this little smiley face. Isn't that cute? Well, guess what? It's not a button. It's not a bead. Now, yeah. Could I take thread through the eyes? Yeah. I could definitely treat it like a button. I think that would ruin the look of the smiley face, but that's just me. So how in the world are we going to get this on here, because we don't want to sew through those two holes or even the little loop here? A lot of people will, I mean, they're going to glue their pieces to other things, like to picture frame pieces or sticky board. People use sticky board. And so I've got my handy dandy Gorilla Glue gun here. This is a larger gun. I haven't used this one very often. I've got a little bitty one, but what you can do is very carefully, we can put a little bit and get it to come out. There's some of it. Wants to be a little stubborn. This glue gun's kind of likes to give me fits sometimes, so I use my other glue gun. This one I've gotten hot right now, so I'm going to try to use it, but there we go. There we go. I had to coax it a little bit. So that might be a little bit too much glue, but just take that and then, like, wherever you want to position it, and then gently press down. Oh, I think I got it just right. And you just leave it there for a while. Let it cool. Let it stick to your project. Okay. Now, you may get some glue coming through here. Okay. So you want to be careful. I have a piece of poster board that I keep, and I typically will not use my table like that, but I think this is okay. But I will use my piece of poster board, and I will put this on there. Like when I'm painting, I always paint on my poster board. And there you go. Now, if the piece that you're stitching is more like an heirloom piece, you're probably not going to be embellishing with stuff like this anyway. If it's a sampler, if you're going to embellish, it's probably going to be beadwork. If you mean for this to be given to other people, you may not want to put hot glue on, at least in the middle of your piece. Now, if this is just a fun piece for you to hang up in your craft room or around the house, yeah, you know, a lot of pieces are not meant to be heirloom pieces. They're fun pieces. And so it's okay to, and I would use hot glue. You can also use, they've got all these little sticky tapes that you can use. You can use those too. And then you can put your embellishment on that way if you're not able to stitch it on. Okay. So, this wasn't the smoothest tutorial in the world. I'm glad. So if you're still with me, thank you very much. So you've seen a couple of different ways to put the beads on, and then we've got a couple of different ways to put buttons on, and just secure those buttons. And like I said, I would stitch through if I'm putting a button on, especially a single one, I'm probably going to stitch through those holes several times to make sure that it stays put. So just experiment with it. See what you like, see what you don't like. Like me, I like beads better than buttons. And I would do this before I would put buttons on there, just because I have a harder time with buttons, as you can probably see. but I still did the tutorial anyway. So, but I want you to see where I struggle too. And I've been stitching for many years, but I haven't done embellishments like other people have done embellishments. And there are plenty of videos out there where you can watch people do it in many different ways, and then you can get an idea of how you would like to do it. So don't take anybody's way of doing it as the gospel, because, you know, like I said, with everything else, there are so many different ways that you can do it. You have to find what's comfortable for you. So I hope that you have found this at least informative, in some ways helpful to you. If you have, please give a like, subscribe. I'd love to have you join the community with me. And I hope that you are creative with your buttons and your beads and everything else, and that you are blessed, and I will see you later. Bye.